Welcome, family, to the very first episode of Reinvented Narrative. I'm your host, Aaron Burnett, and today we embark on a journey together. This isn't just about my story, it's about our story. It's the story of going from ordinary to amazing, one step, one challenge, and one episode at a time. If you've ever doubted yourself, felt out of place, or questioned your worth, this podcast is for you. Because here, we're about embracing the process of reinvention. And trust me, no matter where you're starting from, God's got more in store for you. I want to kick things off by being real with you. I was born in Jamaica, and throughout my life, I've not met my father. I don't know who my father is. And I didn't really meet my mother until I was 9 years old when I came to Canada. And growing up, I faced various challenges. I struggled emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Because the thing is, when you don't know where you're coming from, or where you come from, or your roots, it's hard to figure out where you're going. And there was a sense of abandonment that I experienced throughout my life. And that shaped a lot of my years as a man. But here's the thing. I didn't stay in that place. I didn't feel sorry for myself and believe this is all that was there for me. There's always a belief within me that I deserve better. So I couldn't stay in that same place because I believed that God had plans for me. And the same is true for you. That's why you're here. Listen to this podcast because you believe God has more for you. So maybe you felt like you've been really offered or dealt a really bad hand in your life. Maybe you've been wrestling with low self-esteem. I've struggled with that too. Or maybe you're wondering if you are not good enough. Maybe you feel you're not good enough. Believe me, I get it. I understand. I've been there too. But let me tell you something. Let me say this to you. You are good enough. You're worth it. If you weren't worth it, God wouldn't have you on this earth. God would not put opportunities before you, such as this podcast, to help you grow. And we can grow together. So as a kid, I used to ask myself, why me? Why do I have to face these challenges? But looking back now, I see God's hand in every moment. Every moment I can see vividly God moving me from place to place, from situation to situation, preparing me for things that are to come. He's guided me through. And that's what Reinvented Narrative is about. Seeing God's hand in the middle of your story. Even when you can't see what the full intention of the picture or the purpose of your life is. So now, let's talk about mindset. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your mind. Your mind will either be your greatest asset or your biggest obstacle. The way we think, the things we've learned, the way we understand life, they can either get in your way or push you forward. So for a long time, I didn't believe I could be more than what I was interpreting from my circumstances, the struggles, my situation. I didn't know as a man what it really meant to be the man. The examples, the mentors that should have been there weren't there. So in a lot of ways I had to learn as I go. So I struggled in that area as well. And like I said, struggled with being smart enough, because when I came to Canada, I was placed back a grade. I should have been grade 4, but I was placed in grade 3. Or I should have been grade 5, I was placed in grade 4. So just that experience made me feel I wasn't on par. And I struggled with that through my whole life. Not feeling smart enough. In the environments that I grew up in, the people around me did their best. But I do recognize that the environment didn't know how to bring out the best in who I was. And I'm not complaining. I'm not putting it down, because it actually worked out in my favor when all was said and done. Because had I not had those type of experiences, I wouldn't have anything to compare who I needed to be was. God knows why certain situations occur in our life. So my environment helped me to want to go greater. It actually even taught me that I can't determine who I am to be based on where I am. I have to let God be the one that guide me to where I need to be. Because at times people around us are going to feel threatened by us. At times people are going to see a certain light within us, and they're going to want to diminish it. So they may put us down. They may seek to make us feel small. They may not give us the credit that we are due, because they notice that light that flickers. There's something different about you. So you can't let your environment determine who you are to be. And I learned that. So maybe you know what I'm talking about. Maybe you're experiencing it in your own life right now. Maybe you understand this because you've seen the direction your life has taken. And you've seen your struggles and your challenges. So you can totally relate with what I'm saying. You know that somewhere within you there's a flicker of greatness. There's a potential that you can see within yourself, but your environment is not supportive of that. So instead of people supporting you, at times they may go silent, or they may seek to be negative or seek to put you down, or you may not get any positive feedback. They may even start to distance themselves from you, not want to be around you. Almost as if they're becoming uncomfortable with what's emerging inside of you. Sometimes people may be very comfortable with the fact that you're mediocre. They're okay with you struggling. But when you start changing and leveling up and growing and developing, they don't know how to handle that. Because they don't see that in their own lives. They don't realize that they have special abilities and talents as well. So instead of supporting you, they become jealous or envious of who you are and seek to dim your light. But here's what I began to realize. Whether or not people are comfortable with my mediocrity, when people are comfortable with my mediocrity, that's a problem for them to handle. Because God didn't make me to fit into someone else's box, and He certainly didn't make you to fit in someone else's box. So your mindset matters. The way we think matters. And when you start seeing yourself as God sees you, everything changes. Situations that seem like an obstacle begin to seem as a doorway to take you to a better place. Everything changes. God, doors you thought were locked begin to open. Opportunities you never imagined become possible. But listen, this shift in mindset, it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes serious intentionality. You have to be deliberate and specific. And you need to pray. There are times when you don't know. You've been in a situation and circumstance so long, you don't even know how to shift from there. So it'll take a lot of prayer, a lot of listening to God, directing you. It takes also stepping out of the narrative others have written for you, and then begin to write your own narrative. And that's what this podcast is here for, to help you rewrite that narrative, to help you rewrite your story, to remind you that it's never too late to start becoming the person God always intended you to be. Now let me share a real turning point in my journey. There was a time when I really hit rock bottom emotionally. It was back in 2012. I really began to look at myself, and I saw that I was nowhere near the potential that I should be. In high school, I was a football player, and I was good at it. But if I had believed in myself enough, perhaps I would have made it to college level. I didn't believe I was smart enough. So I begin to remember some of the things I'd done in my growing up that showed me that there was something about me that wasn't fully being tapped into. So I hit rock bottom emotionally. And I could see people around me, the people close to me. They would see me in my worst moment. And I could feel the weight of their expectations, or maybe the lack thereof. They had seen me fail so many times that the expectations became less of me becoming better than I was. They began to feel comfortable with the version of me that was broken and struggling and unsure of myself. But then I realized something that changed everything. You see, I began to see that God's view of me was the only one that really mattered. Not theirs, not anybody else, not anybody in my environment, not anybody in my past. None of those views matters. Not anybody in this world. Not anybody here watching on the podcast. And once I started to believe in the version of myself that God was calling me to be, everything shifted. I'm talking about a complete 180, a different direction. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about stepping into who I was meant to be. So that's what reinvention looks like. It's not about becoming someone different. Truthfully, it's about being who I was always meant to be. But for whatever reason, I was avoiding it. Usually based on insecurity, usually based on an environment that doesn't support anybody becoming better than who they've been all their lives. And I want to take a moment right now to have you reflect. I want you to reflect. Really look at yourself and where you are. And ask yourself, are you stuck in someone else's version of your story? Are you limiting yourself because others are more comfortable with you playing small in the world? If that be the case, it's time to break free from that. It's time to let that go. It's time to put that behind you. So, all right. So let's get practical for a minute. How do you start reinventing your narrative? Because it's one thing to talk about it. But I want to give you some steps you can actually take. So the first thing you need to do is to acknowledge that your past does not define your future. I know it sounds simple, but if you're driving in your car and you're looking in your rear view mirror at what's behind you, that's not going to take you where you need to get. That's a reminder of where you're coming from, but that's not where you're going. So you need to acknowledge that your past does not define your future. This is foundational. You can't move forward if you're chained to your mistakes, if you're chained to your failures, or even the version of yourself that other people are comfortable with. You have to let that go. A second step is that you need to understand that reinvention is a process. It takes time, day by day. It's not a one-time event. It's something you commit to every single day, day in and day out. You're going to have days when you doubt yourself, where the old thoughts try to creep back in. But every time you do, you look in that rearview mirror and you look back where you're coming from. You need to remind yourself that that's not where you're going. You're not going backwards. You're going forward. So the third step then is to surround yourself with people who believe in your growth. This one is key. You need people who are going to push you, to encourage you, and remind you of who you're becoming. Now here's the thing, you may not know a lot of people like that in your environment, because that's the same environment that didn't know how to support you and your talents and your ability and the flicker that's within. So oftentimes it's time to get into reading books of people that are in places or have had experiences that allowed them to grow into becoming more successful in their life or really living their potential. So these books, these authors would become that circle of friends that would be able to push you, to encourage you, and to remind you of who you're becoming. You can't rely on the people who are stuck in the past version of you. You deserve a circle that reflects your future, not your past. So my final thought today about family, here's the truth. Reinvention is possible for all of us. It's never too late to start. No matter what you've been through, no matter where you've come from, God's hand is on your life, and He has much more in store for you. So as we wrap up this first episode, I want to leave you with this takeaway. You're not defined by your past. No, not in that rear view mirror. That's not where you're going. You're not limited by what others expect of you, your environment, is not a reflection of who you are. God has a purpose for your life, and He's calling you to step into it right now. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. We're just getting started. And there's so much more to come. Every week, we're going to dive deeper and deeper into what it means to reinvent your narrative. We'll do this together. And trust me, it's going to be an amazing ride. Again, thank you for listening to Reinvented Narrative, where we're going to go from ordinary to amazing, one show at a time. If you connected with today's episode, if what I shared really resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your story, and let's build this community together. Follow me on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and make sure you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget, you have the power to rewrite your story, starting today. This is Aaron Burnett, and I can't wait to see you next time on Reinvented Narrative. Stay blessed, stay focused, and remember, you're made for more than ordinary.